Boyer is important because the Turning Point shell companies that Tyler Boyer managed just happened to be the same shell companies paying 110 LLC. Let me show you how Tyler Boyer describes the first time that he met Charlie Kirk.
TPUSA is dealing with something way bigger than any drama you've heard about. What dropped yesterday just cracked things wide open. The new financial audit shows some eyebrow-raising stuff. Multiple companies popping up, strange movements, and unexplained connections that people can't ignore anymore. Seriously, if there's one video that breaks down the real story behind what's happening at TPUSA, it's this one. Because once you see how the pieces fit, you'll start to understand the deeper layers behind everything that's been unfolding lately, and maybe just maybe why certain people were pushed into certain roles at just the right time. Now, I'm not saying I know exactly who was behind what happened to Charlie. Nobody can say that for sure, but when you want answers, you start with the facts and trace the patterns. You watch how things line up, connect the dots, and keep the conversation open. That's how real investigations work in plain sight, step by step with everyone watching the clues unfold together. And the biggest part of this theory centers around one shocking detail: why Erika Kirk was suddenly made CEO. Because if the reasoning behind that move is what it seems, it could explain everything. And believe me, it had nothing to do with qualifications or perfect timing. It was about fixing a much bigger mess that had already started spinning out of control. All right, listen up. Watch this whole thing through because it's about to get real. You're gonna want to stay till the end. Trust me, if you catch yourself thinking, wow, I actually learned something new here, that's your cue to stick around for the next upload. But if you start feeling uncomfortable or defensive while watching this, well, maybe that says something about who's feeling the heat right now. Anyway, no hard feelings unless you're one of the top execs at TPUSA sitting there thinking, oh no, he's connecting every single dot. So yeah, hit that like button, subscribe, and let's dive straight into this wild section about Tyler Boyer, because this part is seriously eye-opening. Let's start with Tyler Boyer. This isn't just some random name being thrown around. He was reportedly serving in top leadership positions at TPUSA, first as CFO, then later as COO, positions that gave him serious access to the organization's finances. We're talking about an operation that handles close to $100 million a year. That's a huge amount of money flowing in and out, and whoever has the power to approve or direct those funds holds an enormous amount of control. Now let's break this down in a way that makes sense. When people talk about how organizations lose track of funds, it often starts internally. Someone inside has the authority to move money, approve payments, or manage contracts. That's where the red flags usually show up, because if someone on the inside has that kind of access, they can direct funds outward under legitimate invoices or vendor accounts, and most people would never notice unless they were digging deep into the numbers.
But it didn't make sense to me that Tyler Boyer lied about it. And I don't trust Tyler Boyer, and that is never going to change. Similarly with Rob McCoy. He makes my skin crawl. I can't explain it. I look at him and he's a bad person and nobody can make me feel one way.
According to what's being pieced together here, Boyer was allegedly connected to several outside entities that did business with TPUSA. That's where the questions start. Why were the same names showing up both inside and outside the organization? And how did those payments flow? Here's where things line up in a way that raises serious questions. Charlie reportedly requested a full financial audit right before everything went down. He brought in outside eyes to comb through the organization's books, someone who had never been given access before. That meant every check, every transfer, every transaction was about to be examined under a microscope. If that's true, then it's fair to wonder, what would that audit have uncovered? Where was the money actually going? If funds were being funneled to certain companies or names tied to internal figures, that could have led to some very uncomfortable discoveries. The sequence of events feels impossible to ignore. You have an internal figure with deep financial access, multiple external companies connected to those same people, and then suddenly an audit that might have exposed everything just days before tragedy struck. That's the kind of pattern that makes anyone stop and think. So yeah, when you line up these details, it paints a picture that feels way too complex to ignore. Maybe it's all a misunderstanding, maybe there's an explanation for every part of it, but if you're really paying attention, you can't deny that the situation goes way deeper than anyone first thought. Here's where things start getting even more suspicious. The names tied to this particular situation are getting a lot of attention. Mike Miller, Doug DeRue, Jake Hoffman, Dwayne Farnsworth, and of course Tyler Boyer, all listed as directors for a group known as We the People USA Inc. Now, people keep asking, why are so many of these companies formed in Delaware? The answer from a business standpoint is simple. Delaware allows companies to register without publicly disclosing their members or managers. In other words, you can open a company there and stay completely anonymous. So here's what's being pointed out. The original company, the one that had all these guys listed as directors, was reportedly shut down. Then not long after, another company appeared. Same network, same circle of people, only this time registered in Delaware. And because Delaware protects ownership privacy, no one can easily see who's really running it. The timing of that move is what makes people suspicious, especially since these companies are connected to TPUSA, which handles massive sums of money each year. Think about it. If someone inside an organization has access to both the outgoing funds and a company receiving those funds, that's a serious conflict of interest. Even if it's all perfectly legal, it looks bad. And when the same few names pop up on both sides of the equation, people are naturally going to start asking questions. Now, no one is claiming they did anything criminal here, but the setup itself raises eyebrows, because if Charlie's financial audit really was digging into these connections, that would have caused major panic for anyone with something to hide. The audit was reportedly deep, the kind that goes line by line through every payment, every contract, every transfer. It's the kind of audit that exposes inconsistencies, even ones people thought would never see the light of day. And if someone was running questionable operations, hypothetically, that audit could have blown the whole thing wide open. Imagine being in that position. You've built your career, your network, maybe even your reputation, and suddenly you realize the audit's about to reveal transactions you can't explain. That's not just embarrassing. That could mean losing everything. So here's where things take a turn, and it's wild. The key question that's been hanging in the air since day one is this. Why was Erika Kirk made CEO in the first place? Like seriously, out of everyone they could have chosen, why her? The move shocked everyone, especially since it seemed like she was thrown into that position overnight. At first glance, it looked like a sympathy move, a way to honor her late husband. But the more you look at it, the more it seems like there might have been another motive. Because if someone's in a fragile emotional state, they're a lot easier to steer, right? And putting Erika in charge meant giving her full control, at least on paper. Behind the scenes, though, that also meant she could be guided, managed, even manipulated by the people who already knew how the system worked. Think about it. You take someone who's grieving, someone new to the role, and surround her with people who already know every financial angle inside TPUSA. Then you tell her what needs to happen, convince her it's all for the good of the organization, and quietly shut down the one thing that could expose everything, the audit that Charlie himself started. It's a strategic move disguised as compassion. Now, to be fair, this is still just a theory, but it's the first one that actually fits the pieces together. Because once you realize that the audit was the biggest threat to everyone who might have been involved in questionable financial practices, it all makes sense. If that audit had gone through, it could have exposed millions in untraceable payments, questionable contracts, or shell operations that didn't add up. So if the goal was to keep that buried, putting Erika in charge, someone who could be kept in the dark, was the perfect move. It's all about the money trail. In almost every major scandal, you follow the cash, and the truth eventually shows up right there on the balance sheet. The theory here is that if Charlie's audit uncovered misused funds or shady transfers, it could have put people in an impossible position. Maybe they feared their careers ending, maybe they worried about legal consequences. Whatever the case, it adds a heavy layer of motive to an already chaotic story. Man, if you've been watching all the way through, thank you. Seriously, make sure to drop a comment with your thoughts. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and share this video with someone who needs to see what's really going on. Trust me, you'll want to be here for the next one because what's coming next might just blow everything wide open.